Imagine a perfect world where you can build a restaurant, open the doors, and make loads of money. Unfortunately, those days are over. It takes great leadership, hard work, and long hours to operate a successful restaurant. Together, we can make it happen. This is Restaurantopia.
I want to talk about time management today. It's something I've been working on for a long time, something really important to me for a good balance and good health in life. But I know everybody's kind of got a strategy to how they manage their weeks. And I want to talk a little bit about mine and what I do, and then some overarching themes that I think could be very helpful, and a couple philosophies I've learned along the way that I think are incredibly beneficial to keeping yourself balanced and keeping yourself feeling good. I often find that work is, fortunately, and I think this was everybody, work is a major stress point, whether we like it or not. Even if we love our jobs, we always want to perform and get that anxiety of what if I don't perform today, or what if I don't get to this, or what if I don't achieve what I want to get. And I love my work life is amazing right now. And I still have that stress and I still have that anxiety and I still fight the battle every day about managing my time more effectively. So without further ado, we'll throw up a presentation here and run through it. And again, if you guys have anything to add or any tricks that could be helpful, please chime in, because I know a lot of you have been managing very large routes for a very long time, and you probably have some amazing silver bullets in there to staying healthy. And I think that's probably what the most important thing about this is staying healthy, right? Mentally and physically. Time management, it's one of those things that I think we all think we're good at. But what I've learned, again, over the last 4 years, I found out that I was really bad at it. And I'm generally a pretty organized person. But again, you guys may know that I have, I teach at Kent, and then I do what I do at Hillcrest. And I have 4 kids at home, all need something. And I have a very busy household with 2 dogs. I do some extracurriculars too, whether it's help my wife with the PTA or help with a club organization on Kent. So I'm perpetually jam-packed. My schedule is always packed up. So I have to be very clever about how I manage my schedule. And if I don't do a good job of it, I collapse. And then I suffer for maybe a week or two afterwards, just due to the disorganization and snowball effect. And it's impacted me negatively a lot. But then on the other side of the coin, if I'm organized and I do a great job of strategizing, then it becomes a very positive thing. And so what I'm trying to do is slide that needle all the way to the positive side all the time, because quite frankly, at the end of the day on Friday, if I got everything I wanted to get done, I feel amazing all weekend. But it's those Fridays where maybe I pushed off a couple projects that I'm just like, damn, I hope this customer doesn't email me asking for this project, right? That happened to me the other day, and it's like the worst feeling. And then I have a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of worry. And then I find myself working on a Saturday, and then maybe I'm not playing Legos with my kids. And again, if I manage my week right, then I should have all day Saturday to play Legos. And if I'm working on Saturday, then it's my fault. And so I'm learning how to mitigate that damage that I do to myself, because I do love myself. But sometimes if you look at my schedule, you would think I hate myself. So one thing that I think that is you should keep in mind all the time, work-life balance is something we talk about a lot. And I think work-life balance is a two-legged stool. And if you guys sat in my seminars, you probably saw this slide already. And it's something I'm pretty passionate about. We talk about work and we talk about life, but what we don't talk about a lot of times is ourselves, that personal time. And what about that time for you? What are you doing to stay healthy away from your family? Because we need that time too, and away from work and away from the stress. And I always call that like the third leg of the stool is that personal stuff that you really like to get into, whether it's fantasy football or whether it's working out or whether it's going to a museum or whatever the hell you like to do. Make sure you allot time for that and build that in. Oftentimes we sacrifice ourselves for work and we sacrifice ourselves for families, but then we don't give ourselves that time. And maybe we get that little bullshit like half hour at the end of the day where we can watch whatever TV program we want. And yeah, that's nice, but I don't think it's enough. I think you got to love yourself a little bit more. And I think you got to build in time into your schedule to spend time on you. Just you, no one else, no wives, no kids, no nothing. Just go for a bike ride, go for a run, whatever the case may be. Just be careful when you run. But, a lot of us, again, we look at it as work life. And there's another element to that I think we often forget. And it's hard to be fulfilled, hard to be balanced when we don't have that. Sometimes we get burnout. Has anybody ever been on burnout before? But being burnout's the worst. This happened to me a lot when I was a chef. It doesn't happen to me very much now. And if it does happen, it's very, very temporary. The chef world is incredibly taxing, as you guys know, and you can succumb to this at some point in time. You all have the propensity to suffer from burnout. And it's hard to recover. It's one of those things. It's like a high ankle sprain in football. It's like, yeah, I can play, but I can't play, as well as I could. And then what happens is this injury just keeps lingering and lingering and lingering. And we've just taken the time out to rehab that high ankle sprain. chances are you'd be healthy in a couple weeks and then you're back to full form, as opposed to stretching it out for weeks on end at 50% capacity. Maybe you take a week down, reset, and then you're at 100% capacity, like right off the rip, maybe week 2. I find that when I'm burnt out, I'm making poor decisions. And what happens is I make decisions just so they go away. So I'm cynical, I'm tired, I'm grouchy. I don't want to deal with a customer. I don't want to deal with my kid. I don't want to deal with a coworker. I just look at it and say, okay, how can I make this shit go away as easy as possible without having to do any work, without having to do anything? And I think the problem with that is you lose sight of the organization, you lose sight of the greater good, because now you're being incredibly selfish. And maybe not personally, it's not such a bad personality trait. It's induced by burnout. But you're looking at it like, okay, how can I get this off my plate as quickly as possible? And you're not looking at the effectiveness, or you're not looking at the impact of what your decision has. Again, you're just kind of clearing the slate haphazardly. And I bet if you all think about your past, or think about some stressful times you've done this, or you've been guilty of this, because I certainly have. And I recommend this to restaurant operators all the time, is if your management's burnt out, they're not making decisions based on your livelihood or well-being. They're making decisions based on their state of emotion in the current time. So be careful of that. Be mindful of that. Don't let yourself get to that point. Make sure you give yourself that third leg on that stool so you can get refreshed, so you can get centered, so you can get balanced. Does anybody have anything they do out there, like as far as like getting balanced, as they take that personal time? Any of you go exercise or go running, anything like that?
Morning meditation.
Morning meditation. So what's that do for you, man?
Just clears my head. Started it a couple of years ago. Don't do it as often as I should, but it really lets me center myself, to be honest with you.
Can you explain your meditation? And Dave, I know you meditate too. This is a fascinating one for me because I haven't dived in yet, and I want to.
Read a couple books. I break it down. I try to go 6 seconds and a thought where I don't drift off. So when I drift off start thinking about work, then I start back over, center myself into my hole, and continue to do that. The goal is to actually go 6 minutes without drifting off, thinking about something else. So I center focus on something. Could be the sun, could be breathing in, breathing deep, and try to do it for 6 seconds at a time, and then gain that momentum.
No kidding. That's awesome. That breathing in and breathing out thing is hilarious, right? Because I remember a counselor told me that like 5 years ago, and she's like, just breathe deep. And I'm like, shut up. Like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And then what I realized is if you're focusing on taking those deep breaths, that's all you're focusing on. And then all of a sudden that becomes your thought process, and it just kind of clears all the shit away, right? It's pretty amazing. Dave, what do you do?
I'm kind of in Troy's boat too. I try to meditate in the morning. One thing I try to start my day with is I try to get up early enough before my 2 kids and my wife, and I go in my basement, and sometimes I meditate, sometimes I check my email, but it's quiet. I actually leave the lights off. It's dark, and I just kind of like get my day started calmly before the chaos starts. And I found that really helps me throughout the day, starting the day properly. Because I feel like if I sleep in, or if my kids are waking me up, or if there's stuff going on in the house, like it's a little more chaotic in the morning, it's not as good of a day. So that's just one thing. I just try to start my day very calmly. I will meditate. I will, it'd be a perfect time to start working out. I'm not doing that right now, but but I've got the time at least to do it. So I try to get in bed at a decent time so I can get up early enough to get started before everybody else. So
that's a great point. And I think what you're doing is analogous to like going swimming in a cold pool, and you're wading in and getting used to the water as you go, which is a much more gentle approach. My style is like wake up at the last minute and dive in the deep end head first and just deal with the shock, but I'm trying to get away from that, right? So to your point, waking up early is a huge point of that. And I love sleep. I love the snooze button so much. That's like the best drug for me. I hit that snooze button and you get to drift off, even if it's only for like 7 minutes. That's this feeling of fading away is outstanding. It takes a lot of discipline, man. And I know you wake up at like 5:30, so good for you. Good for you. I hope to get there one day. So I don't know. I deal with a little bit of anxiety, and I don't talk about it too much. I mean, a couple of you know this. And even while I tend to carry myself pretty confidently, anxiety is terrible. And if you guys have ever dealt with it, it's essentially like, the best way I can put it is like you're on top of a roller coaster and you have all that excitement about, you're going to drop off the roller coaster, like going down that first hill. And it's like that level of intense emotion that you have. The problem with anxiety is there's a piece of the track missing at the bottom, and you know it. And that's how you feel. So you have that excitement, but it's got that incredibly negative spin on it. And what happens is it clouds your judgment immensely. And I deal with this all the time. This is like my Sunday night ritual where I'm like, oh my God, what do I got to do this week? Did I forget to do this? Did I do that? And I have all this negative shit swirling around in my brain. But as the graphic kind of illustrates here, if you look, a lot of these little bits of anxiety or ghosts or what you want to call them, they're actually just repeats of themselves. And what I find in my head is that when I have this negativity swirling around in my head, it's like I'm recycling the same negative stuff. And it makes it feel like it's a huge swarm of negativity or a huge swarm of panic and fear, when in fact, it's just the same 2 or 3 things that are just circulating around. And so the way I find that for me to best deal with anxiety is to organize it out. And I make lists. And I'm sure some of you guys do too. If not all of you guys have to-do lists. Maybe you use, your notes in your phone or Outlook calendar, whatever the case may be. This is the best way for me to get rid of job anxiety. And again, it's anxiety is such a facade and such a lie. And the worst part is it's you lying to yourself and you allowing yourself to tell you it's way worse than it is. I spend so much time dwelling about the future. And what happens is then I put pen to paper and I use something like this. This is an Excel spreadsheet I came up with. Again, I have an incredibly busy schedule. I'm burning the candle at both ends. But what I figured out by using this and being very strict, and again, I'm sure you guys all have your own version of this. It's just a Microsoft Excel document I made in like 3 minutes. But I literally go in and say Monday, and I put the time in the top left here, and I just say, okay, 8 a.m., what do I have to do then? And I go through my Outlook calendar, I go through my notes in my phone, I go through my emails, and I try to centralize every single thing I have to do that week, and then I map it out per day, per time slot. And this visual, for whatever reason, I can't do this in Outlook. Like my Outlook calendar is amazing, but for me, it has to be pen and paper. And that's kind of why this is subjective and everybody has their own move, is because maybe some people are fine with Outlook. And I love Outlook. I live in it. I use OneNote, but this is my be all end all. So on Sunday nights when I sit down, I take all my week and I write it down, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., and then Tuesday, I do the same thing. And even stuff that's like recurring appointments, I write in there. That way I have that visual. When I'm on a phone call with someone and they want to meet up, or if I have an email come through, the Outlook calendar is great. But I always love reverting to this because it just gives me that visual my whole week as clean as I want to write it and the way I want to organize it in my format. And I'm very careful to make sure to build gaps in my time. And I find that that's something I was guilty of a long time because, again, I'm a pleaser, right? I want to make people happy. So in the past, my schedule would say 8 a.m. do this, 8:15 do this, 8:30 do this for this person, 8:45 do this. And I'm not giving myself any time to breathe. And then I'm just running all day. And then by the time I get home from work, like, yeah, I had a great day. I achieved a ton, but I'm exhausted. I got nothing left for my kids. I got nothing left for my wife. I just want to be left alone. I'm grouchy. And quite honestly, that becomes unhealthy too, because then the stress starts perpetuating for me not being available, not sharing the love like I should. And I gave everything to work as opposed to everything to my family. And so by doing this again, I'm able to fill out what I want to do. And I control the narrative or control the schedule of my week as opposed to letting others control it for me. And down in the notes section, I have like little long-term back burner projects I put down there. So if I find myself at like Monday between 2 and 4, I have a nice gap. I go down to my notes section and say, okay, I got to get this menu idea done, or I got to get this pricing survey done. And these things don't have like a definitive time frame. So it helps me tremendously in visualizing. I highly suggest you adopt some system like this. If you want this document, I'll send it to you. But if you guys don't have it, I would get hip to it. It helps so much. And again, it clears out the anxiety in my head because I realize, oh, this is not bad after all. I get all my appointments laid out for the week, all my obligations. Yeah, I get all my obligations pointed out. And then I realize, oh, my week's not bad. I got time for lunch and I got time to catch up on some emails and, that sort of thing. So it helps me tremendously. And maybe you guys don't suffer from the same ailments, but I know I do. And one thing it helps me prevent too, and I love this meme. I stole it from Pals or Graphic or whatever you want to call it. This is oftentimes how I feel because I'm running for my life and I'm so focused on getting everything done that I don't stop and take a look around. And I think this graphic speaks volumes to the notion of being busy and being, kind of with the blinders on, just task oriented. You don't give yourself that time in between appointments to breathe. You don't give yourself that time at the end of the day to reflect or that time to plan for tomorrow. And you end up trying to drag a car of rocks with square wheels, even though someone's got a better solution or a solution's right in front of your face. So again, this hit me kind of hard because I've been guilty of this so many times. And believe it or not, this little graphic has made a pretty drastic impact on my life. I stole this from Dave Ross. I haven't read the book yet. I don't know that I need to read the book. The title or this mantra, Jocko Willink is an ex-Navy SEAL who does a podcast and he does a lot of public speaking and stuff. And his mantra is discipline equals freedom. And it seems contrary to contradict itself. But what I've learned too is the example I guess I can best give to make you guys understand as easily is a college student who's got 3 term papers to do. And when the college student procrastinates, they enjoy what they want to enjoy right now, right? So they want to go to that party tonight. Like, I should write my paper. Now I can go to that party. I can write my paper. It's not due for 2 weeks. And then they go to the party and then they push off their paper. And then maybe they do something else, push off their paper. And then the last like 5 days before those papers are due, they're scrambling. They're up all night cramming. They're stressed. They're full of anxiety. And they're putting out a bullshit product because they didn't have time to really think about it or edit it. And the fact is, if you have the discipline to do that work up front and avoid the procrastination, you get your papers done maybe in the first 3, 4, 5 days. And then you got the next week wide open to pick and choose what parties you want to go to, edit your papers to make them better, sleep in, do whatever the hell you want to do. So the notion here is discipline up front, meaning avoiding procrastination and avoiding instant gratification. You align yourself to get your stuff done first, and then you have all that free time on the back end. And I think that's such a great notion, and it works out in spades. At least, it's something I've practiced, and it works out tremendously, and I subscribe to it. So give that some thought, because, again, it's too easy to say, yeah, I can go to lunch with you, or, yeah, you know what, I don't feel like doing that today. I think I'm going to go do this or do that. Listen, if you churn it out right off the rip, you free yourself up on the back end to do whatever you choose to do, as opposed to allowing the projects to choose what to do for you. And that's a bad spot to be in. I hate being under the gun. Hate it. I love being in front of it. I love being in control. It helps my mental space, helps me feel good because I'm ahead of the game. It makes me feel like I'm the chip leader when I'm playing poker, right? I got all the options. I got all the flexibility. It's a beautiful thing, really. I should read that book one day. So instant gratification to me is the best friend of procrastination. And going back to what I said is it's very easy to call your day a day at 3:00 and say, you know what, I just, I'm feeling this. I want to go fishing, or I want to go ride my motorcycle, or I want to go hang out with friends and drink some beers at happy hour, or whatever the case may be. And that's great for the moment. It's great for instant gratification. The fact is, though, it's the opposite of discipline. You end up procrastinating, and then you have the snowball effect, and then you find yourself stressed out because you're under the gun. And again, your productivity, yeah, it's there. You're pushing out products, but the quality of your products aren't so good. I think if you do the stuff on the front end, then you have that time to think about it, reflect on it, edit it as need be. And then you're much more relaxed going into that presentation or going into that customer meeting, whatever the case may be. It's just a better way of doing things. So one of my favorite things I've learned at Hillcrest is don't be a sucker. And Nancy Reagan says it best when she says, or just say no. When I first started at Hillcrest, it was like I didn't have a lot to do because I was just learning the way, right? But you have this anxiety like, oh my God, I'm not doing my job, and I'm not doing what I need to be doing, and I'm not being valuable to the company. And oftentimes we misappropriate the value of doing that stuff. And I would run will calls for everybody. And Friday I would help out by doing this for a customer, or again, the will call thing, because I live down in Stowe. So the Akron guys may have been busy, give me a call. And then what happens was I would say yes, like way too many times. And it wasn't just one guy or a girl. It was 2, 3, 4, 5. I would say yes to, because I have a hard time saying no. And then what happens is I'm running over God's green earth, and I'm sacrificing so much of myself because someone else didn't feel like making the drive, or maybe they were a little too busy to make the drive, maybe due to procrastination, or maybe due to true busyness. I was sacrificing too much of myself, and it wasn't fair to me, but I didn't realize it because I thought I was doing good. I'm like, hey, I'm helping this person, I'm helping this person, I'm helping this person. So the amount of sacrifice I was making to deliver these will calls, and we're just going to use this as an example, and this is generalizable to all facets. I'm thinking, my God, I'm really helping these people out. But at the end of the day, one case of gloves going to a customer doesn't make that impact. In fact, they forgot about it probably an hour later. I didn't, on the other hand, because it pushed my whole weekend back. It pushed my time with my family back. It pushed the rest of my responsibilities back. So I wasn't moving the needle. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And what I've learned now is saying no sometimes actually is incredibly beneficial. It's hard to do because we're all hospitality people, right? We all want to say yes. We all want to service customers and service our internal customers as our friends and colleagues and all that jazz. But you have to be able to make that assertion, especially the younger folks that are newer to the game out there. It's okay to say no sometimes, and realize what you're doing for someone may not really be making a difference, but you may just be bailing them out due to a lack of preparation or a lack of organization. And again, it's nice to do a favor, and it's nice to help people out. But after the first time you do it, and it continues to be a habit, and you start feeling like you're getting taken advantage of, say no. And listen, I'm not blaming anybody out there, because we all have a tendency to do it. When someone does something nice for us, it's easier to ask them again, right? It's hard the first time, but it's easier to keep asking them afterwards. So again, just say no like Nancy Reagan here, and I think you'll be in great shape. Email's a big one. Who's got a good email system out there? Dave, I know yours is just a red X. Just red X everything.
I do it more than anything else in my life.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Anybody have a good email system or any suggestions on how to manage emails? Because I think we all get bombarded with emails now, right? Like we drown them. They come from all directions all the time. It's too easy. It's too easy to push shit off to people.
I'd like to just give a tip, and this may not work for everybody. 2 things I try to do. I try to respond to every email, even if it's thank you for getting back to me, because I actually learned this through a customer who always responded to every one of my emails, even just like a thanks, Dave. Because sometimes I feel like, first of all, it's showing gratitude, and even though it's a small little thing to hit send on an email, when somebody gets a response back that you got it and you appreciated it, there's a little bit of a good feeling there, even though it might be small. Thing that I try to do, I always look at emails and I look at the potential project or task or response or anything that needs to happen in that email. And I think to myself, if I didn't respond to this or I didn't do this, I guess I shouldn't say didn't respond because I always try to respond, but if I didn't do this, what would happen? And, that's helped me kind of prioritize, I guess, because it can get daunting. Got emails coming in from all different places and things to do and stuff people needs. Now, obviously, if customers are emailing you or purchasing needs something or operations needs something, you got to respond. Like we got to take care of business, but some of those other things can really get overwhelming if you let them get in front of the other stuff. So.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Dave, and you taught me that, and I subscribe to the exact same thing. And here you see in the second bullet point is one of your mantras is emails aren't instant messenger, right? So the need to respond immediately shouldn't be there unless, again, it's emergency from ops or internal, something like that, as David mentioned. But you got to kind of coach people along. The quicker you respond, and I used to be that guy, like I would have to respond to every email before the end of the day, like because I'm not pleasing people if I'm not doing that, right? And then what I've learned now is if you just keep pushing it off a little bit, then you set the expectations of other people so they don't expect it immediately from you anymore. Which again puts you in a good position to be able to jive and juke and juggle your time. So Dave, you might recognize that last bullet point there, buddy.
I'm shocked.
You should not be shocked. You should be flattered. You said this to me in a meeting like 2 years ago and it stuck with me. Because the red X and what happens if you don't respond right now or if you don't do this, it's helped me tremendously too. Because again, I used to be such a sucker. I would answer every email as quickly as possible. And I would volunteer for a ton of shit that I shouldn't even be volunteering for that I don't have the time to volunteer for. And for no good reason other than someone else didn't feel like doing it, right? So what I've learned too is it was with emails, it's nice to push back a little bit. Like if someone asks you for something, it's nice when you have a hinge. And what I mean by that is you can't get the job done unless they supply something back to you. And so it's always a good barometer how important something is to someone. So what I find is sometimes when I get caught in these quandaries, if I push back a little bit strategically, obviously tactfully, politely, all that jazz, but if I can get them on the hook and I can make them a stakeholder, the project's probably going to have a lot more success if it takes off. But most of the time you find the project doesn't really take off because it's so damn easy to put work on other people. But when you get called on to do the work yourself, all of a sudden it's like, shit, is it that important to me? Because again, typing an email is super easy, but doing the build sheets, maybe not so easy. But again, I want you to have stake in the game if you're going to push a bunch of stake in the game on me. And what happens if you just hit delete? I don't know. You decide for yourself. But I promise you I delete more messages now than I ever have. As Dave said, there's a common courtesy involved in email. There's nothing worse than a deadline on the other end when you send out a great email. But at the same time, like hitting delete's not bad. It's not bad. Don't be a sucker. This thing right here helped me a lot. I think I saw this on Brian Seitz's wall in his office, and it's called the Eisenhower Quadrant. And so this helps me with that email kind of decision-making process that I was talking about earlier, whether to delete it or not. And you can see how the quadrant works. If it's urgent and important, like do it right now, right? And if it's not important and urgent, delegate it. Give it to someone else to do or put it off. Not urgent, but really important. Schedule a time to do it down the road and make sure you block off that time. And then listen, if it's not urgent and not important, just hit that red X. And you'll be surprised at how many things fall into that category when you actually take the time to think about it. So other than being a Disney pop icon, apparently Demi Lovato is also a profound philosopher. I found this quote on the internet when I was looking up because I didn't know how to express how expectations are disappointments. And she said it best. If you guys are familiar with Demi Lovato, not exactly the source I would expect to have this information come from, but this is brilliant. And I'll tell you why. We as pleasers, we as go-getters, we as overachievers, we have a tendency to tell people like, yeah, you have a need, I'm going to fix it tomorrow, right? And I've said this in my seminars and I've said it in podcasts, and I'll say it time and time again. We box ourselves in so damn much, and we put unnecessary pressure on ourselves. And a lot of times we can eliminate that. Let me paint you a scenario. So if a customer needs something, we'll go back to menu costing. Customer needs menu costing, right? And it's a long job and it's laborious and it's hard. And we're trying to really win that customer over. Our tendency is to say, hey, no problem, chef. I'll get you this costing by the end of the week. Not a problem whatsoever. And then what happens is you don't realize that this is a 40-hour project. So the end of the week comes and you're only 20 hours in. You got 20 hours more to go. And you're like, shit, this is going to take me another week. So then you got to email that chef or hide from that chef, one of the two. And you got to say, hey, look, I'm really sorry. I can't get it done today. I'll have it to you by next Friday. Or you hide from the chef and they email you and say, hey, what's up? I thought you said you were going to have this done by Friday. And what's funny about that scenario is, had you just taken the time to step back and say, hey, chef, when do you need this costing done by? And you get a frame of when their true expectations are. A lot of times you'll find that chef will say, well, I need it next month, or I need it in 4 weeks. And then what happens is you can go do your costing in 2 weeks, which in the first scenario, I painted 2 weeks is a complete letdown and a failure. But in this scenario, just by asking that one question, when do you need this by? They set the parameters for you, and you get it done in 2 weeks and you look like a hero. And the difference is you asked one simple question, when do you need this by? But so often we volunteer the time because we want to be studs, right? We want to show them how badass we are. And we're like, I'll get this to you tomorrow. But they don't need it for a week. Why are you promising tomorrow? You're pinching yourself in. I do this all the time, and I have to make a conscious decision. I'm probably going to get it tattooed on my hand, quite honestly, when do you need this by? How quick is this? How urgent is this? Those questions can save you so much stress. But again, we're just like, tomorrow, I'll get it to you tomorrow. We'll get it to you 2 days, no problem. And we don't fully think about the process, and we don't realize that that's an unreasonable expectation. And what we're doing by setting these lofty expectations is just creating disappointment. But if we had never set the expectations in the first place, no one would be disappointed. Again, if they need it in a month, you get it done in 2 weeks, you're a hero. You know, if you tell them you're going to get it to them in a week and you get it in 2 weeks, you're a loser. And it's all the difference is one freaking question. But yeah, we do this all the time. I absolutely adore this. And this is, again, something I've shared in my seminars. And I don't even know where I came up with this. I think it was in a newsletter I subscribed to called Understandably. And if you guys aren't hip to it, it's a great morning read. It's by Bill Murphy, used to write for Inc. And he writes this like really personal newsletter. And it's just such a great read. It's always intelligent, but not too heavy. It's a great way for me to get my brain start working in the morning right after I wake up. But it says, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter, right? If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. That to me is so profound, right? Because what happens is, this goes back to what I'm talking about with the discipline piece, is when you push out a project like super fast, you don't have a ton of time to edit yourself. So yeah, maybe you get the project done and maybe it's pretty good. But when you look at it like a couple of days later, you're like, oh my God, I could trim this down. I can make this more concise. I can make it more to the point, less convoluted. And I love it. The profoundness to me is because you would think that if you had more time, you would have written a longer letter. But what it comes down to is self-editing. And if you give yourself and you allow that time, if you use that discipline to give yourself freedom, you have the freedom to go back, edit yourself, and become even better than what you were before. Just because you have a little extra time, you have slept on it, you have looked at it objectively, and it looks a lot different when you trim it down. And it's not full of fodder and bullshit and insecurities. It's to the point, it's concise, it's digestible, and it's ready to roll. All right. Well, listen, if you guys don't have any questions or comments, I appreciate your time as usual. It's always a blast for me. Thanks for listening in, and we'll talk to you later.
This is a high quality pod. Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Adios.
Thank you for listening to Restaurantopia. The gratitude that we have for each and every one of you spending your precious time to listen to this podcast is immeasurable. Please make sure to tell a friend about this podcast. And also, if you have any feedback for us, visit us on restaurantopia.com and drop us a line. You can also subscribe on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. Thank you, and have a great day.
Dom says Jocko is badass. I need to read this book. Yeah, he is a badass. Subscribe to his podcast, Ross says.